Carmelo Anthony is considered one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. This is his NBA career with over 25,000 points. And not only that, but being the type of scorer that can score on any level. When you ask NBA greats of today, and even in the past who played, they will all say that Carmelo Anthony was one of the hardest players that they ever had to guard. Despite Carmelo Anthony having one of the most successful careers, especially when it comes to scoring, one of the major things that never really happened to him is winning an NBA championship. And yeah, history will probably be different if Carmelo Anthony was drafted by the Detroit Pistons. We may be speaking of him in a much different light. But over these last few days, I've been really watching a lot of podcasts and watching him when he was on Paul George's podcast and when he brought on Dwayne Wade on his own podcast. It was just really interesting hearing some of the conversations that were being had during this time. Not only with the current NBA news, but even speaking of the past. And one of the comparisons really today I wanted to use in discussing this video about Carmelo Anthony and just NBA history itself is the difference in mentality. Not only just mentality alone, but that three-letter word that pretty much affects all of us on a day-to-day basis: ego. Yes, ego is probably, especially for an athlete who is successful, who has changed the game in many ways, you already know that ego plays a huge driving force in athletes in their day-to-day lives and just people in general. It's ruined NBA dynasties. It's even ruined some players' careers in some way, shape, or form. And, well, I believe in the sense that this same can be said about Carmelo Anthony. That's not me trying to hate or say anything bad about Carmelo Anthony because he's one of the best players to ever play this game. But we all know that his career could have been somewhat different if he was willing to sacrifice a bit more. But let me roll this clip from him talking about possibly teaming up with D-Wade, Bron on the Miami Heat.
At that time, I wasn't ready to go partner and team up with nobody because I was building my own shit in Denver. So to leave my own shit and go team up with somebody, it wouldn't have worked. Yo, bro, it's no conversation. I'm staying. I'm taking a 5-year 85. I'm staying in Denver. I'm happy, boom, boom. So they was trying to finagle how to make that shit work. And then it was like, I think one of them had to take like 16 and the other one 17 and the other one like, you know what I mean? Like all of them had to really sacrifice, which I take my hat off to them for doing that because that's hard as shit to leave at that point in time in your career, young like that. We all was at the top of the game. Nobody was thinking about that. So when they did it, it just made everybody like, oh shit, Melo, you could have been the fourth one. Now, and it's just, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Imagine me at 23 years old, 24 years old, being the fourth option on the team when I'm leading my team every single year. Like I'm finding my way in this league.
Right.
And you want me to leave that and go be a fourth option.
Yeah.
I don't know mentally how I was going to be ready for that.
Exactly.
It ain't got nothing to do with money.
Right.
Mentally, I don't know how I was going to do that. I'd have had a different role. I'd have had to figure out my role on that team. These are alphas that we all coming together. Like Bron is an alpha. D Wade is an alpha.
Crazy.
Everybody don't give Chris Bosh enough credit. Chris Bosh was ridiculous in Toronto.
Right.
So for them three to go, I'm like, man, hell no. Like I can't be that 4-5. Hell no. So I'm cool. I'm out here in Denver. So the conversations always was like, that was always a what if to Miami, but people don't look at it like that. It's just, oh, Melo was selfish. So he took 5 years. He took the money and he could have had 3 rings. And man, all that shit a lot of times don't be worth it.
Right.
So they ain't gonna tell you that. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, a lot of times that shit don't be worth it. They made it worth it because they figured it out. They worked it out. They won consistently. They created something down there. Who knows if that would have been the same case if I would have went down there.
And let's be real, during this time, man, these guys doing this was something that really hasn't been done in a long time. Some of the best players in the world during that time teaming up together and joining the team and hearing what Carmelo Anthony had to say. He said he was not trying to be the fourth option. And realistically speaking, if all those guys joined together, that would have been actually crazy. In reality, during that time of free agency, when all these guys were thinking about teaming up and possibly going somewhere to play with each other, I think that they wouldn't have signed Chris Bosh in the process. But even still then, would he really be willing to sacrifice his role for that team to help them succeed? Because as you heard him saying, he was that guy in Denver. He really wasn't trying to be in that type of situation. And the reality was, like, yeah, when you look at these NBA dynasties and you look at these teams that have won multiple NBA championships, one of the biggest things that every player has to do is sacrifice. And no player has done this better, in my opinion, personally, than you got Steph Curry's of the world, but you got another guy who has done this in a way that is similar to Steph, and that's Dwayne Wade. And another guy who he brought on to his own podcast, Carmelo Anthony, he brought on Dwayne Wade, and let's just roll the clip and listen to what Dwayne Wade had to say.
Y'all formed the big three, the Heatles. You know what I'm saying? You, Bron, Bosh, and a lot of people talk about, you know, the sacrifice that you made so that the team could be successful and work, you know, with Bron. And you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think that, as we were talking about earlier, people talk about that enough? Where it's like, yo, listen, man, like this is Wade County, bro, but he did the Derek Jeter shit, and he, you know what I mean? When A-Rod came through, they made it work. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when people talk about you in particular, you had to manipulate this because it's your team.
Yeah,
it's Wade County.
That was a tough decision.
You got a chip.
Yeah, I mean, I made it look like it wasn't tough, but it was. Well, I think I'm the best player in the world.
You know what I'm saying? And you got that energy.
I'm coming off of. It was tough, but you know, when we come in, man, it was our era when we came in. They say that if you want to be mentioned with these individuals, you got to win championships. And so, even though individually I thought I was a bad boy, I knew that I couldn't individually do it by myself. And I knew I didn't do it by myself the first time. I knew only reason that I was a champion because I was gifted to have Shaq on my team,
right.
Gary Payton on my team, Antoine Walker on my team, and so forth and so on, right? And so I'm back in this seat again where I'm like, I'm 28, but I know how it goes. We only get older and you only got a certain opportunity to strike. And so that free agency moment was really my opportunity as one of the oldest ones out of all of us to strike.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I make the wrong decision, I'm ending with one championship and whatever the case may happen. And so for me, when we got the opportunity and realized we could play together, we got the opportunity to realize we could play together. Like, it took me to really compress my ego big time. And I didn't even have a huge ego because I didn't always grow up a star.
Right.
I grew up a role player,
right,
who eventually became a star because of my work and because of my opportunity and my moments. But I had to go right back to that. And it was in Miami, where I had built Wade County. I had turned a city into a hoop city with my teammates, and it's not just me. But that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie. It was tough. But man, you know what? I feel like that was the best move for me to make to get the things I wanted out of the game. And what I wanted out of the game was I wanted them Larry O'Brien trophies, man.
Yes. You know what I'm saying?
I wanted it because I already had one, and I knew that feeling, and I was like, I need that again. And so this is going to be my best moment in my career with free agency where I control it, where I could put myself in the best position to get that again.
Right.
And so the sacrifice was made individually, and to play with, you know, one of the GOATs in our game in the city that I have built, you know, worked hard to build it and finally get my own. But it was bigger. It's in my mind at that time. I made sense out of it. I'm not Serena. I'm not a tennis player. It's not an individual sport. It's about the team. It's about what you ultimately want. And this is the best opportunity to get that. And so you're going to figure it out.
Listen, Dwayne Wade was Miami. Wade County, for crying out loud. This was his city. This was his franchise. He helped them win an NBA championship, their first ever. And he's already regarded as the greatest Miami Heat player to ever play for that franchise. At the time, you know, when these guys had the opportunity to actually team up and play together, you already know, as he said in the clip, this was really one of the hardest things that he ever had to do because, as we just stated, that was his city. He was already an established NBA champion on top of that. But as he's seen, when you already have guys that just have that light on them that is even greater, and speaking of that, it's LeBron James teaming up with him, we all knew that he was going to have to really be willing to sacrifice it all. And there's always that famous clip out there, Dwayne Wade saying to LeBron James, like, look, dude, you got to take us to the promised land. Now imagine that. This is your city, your franchise, and you're telling another guy who's never won an NBA championship, a guy that is great, way greater than he is, but still, imagine having to suppress your own pride and ego to the side and saying, hey, man, you just got to take us to the promised land. You got to take us to win an NBA championship. You have to be that guy. Imagine doing that and the sacrifice that takes. A lot of guys can't do that. That's why, when teams have these big threes and all these guys team up, everybody is sacrificing. On these championship teams now today, for crying out loud, everybody has to know their role on the team in order to win at the highest level. What if Carmelo Anthony decided to actually team up with these guys or actually build a sustainable big three instead of just focusing really on being that guy? Because the closest time Carmelo Anthony ever came to winning an NBA championship was when he was on the Denver Nuggets, when he had Chauncey Billups on his team. And Chauncey Billups was really the guy that came in and really made that structure for that team in order for them to really compete and win at the highest level. The only other example I can really give you, though, unfortunately, of Carmelo Anthony was when he did get traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder during that time. And we've kind of already seen how that situation pretty much worked. Carmelo Anthony just wasn't really the same player that he used to be. The guy has the mentality and mindset of a scorer. He is walking bucket, and that's what he does best. However, does that always translate to winning basketball? No, it doesn't. And do you remember during that time when they had acquired him on the Thunder and they asked in the press conference, was he going to come off the bench? And let's just roll that clip real quick.
How do you feel about starting at the 4, or the concept of starting at the 4, or even coming off the bench? And the second question is...
Who, me?
Oh. I guess that answers that part.
I mean, I don't know where that started, where that came from. Hey, P, they said I got to come off the bench. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, well, how do you... I guess the bench question is not a...
Now, look, I know eventually down the line, I believe that Carmelo Anthony did come off the bench, if I remember or not, while he was on the Thunder. But they were not the same team that they were. They had so much potential, that Thunder team with the Westbrook and George and Melo, but they did not live up to any of the expectations. I'm not going to blame all of this on Carmelo Anthony, but I believe that if he did play better or was willing to actually sacrifice more, they probably would have been an even better team than they were at the time. What is the biggest contributing to this? Well, that three-letter word that we always say, ego. Ego was the thing, because this guy was a superstar type of player. I wouldn't really necessarily say a superstar, but he was the best player on your franchise, and he was always the best player pretty much on every team that he's played on. So imagine him taking that big sacrifice and teaming up with guys who were in the midst of their prime, still in Russell Westbrook and Paul George, who was coming in as one of the best players on that team. Like, imagine that. This tenure with the Oklahoma City Thunder for Melo was really the turning point of his NBA career, because if you remember, after I believe he left the Thunder, really, it was hard for him to even begin to figure out what team was the best fit for him. And there was a time period where he wasn't even playing basketball. And coming to this, back to Dwayne Wade, a guy that was willing to sacrifice and contribute to his team for the greater good, what is he now remembered for? He's remembered as one of the top 5, if not top 3, greatest shooting guards to ever play this game. But let's not forget either that Dwayne Wade, his time as well in the league, when he left Miami, that during the time was a huge deal, but ego played a role in that too, because, well, Dwayne Wade was sacrificing a lot throughout his NBA career, and the Miami Heat were not willing to pay Dwayne Wade at the time the money that he wanted, so guess what? He left. He went to Chicago and played for the Bulls. Because at the end of the day, regardless of sacrificing for the greater good, and we've seen it happen throughout NBA history a lot with players, there's still a time where our own individuality comes into play, because every player in some way, shape, or form is trying to create their own legacy. no matter how you put it or not. Guys want to be remembered more than just great. They want to be the greatest. Let me use one more example of ego and how it plays a role as well too. And that is with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving gets drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, trying to help this franchise come back to the promised land after years of that guy in the shadows. LeBron James was leading that franchise and doing big things for that Cleveland organization during that time. But LeBron leaves the Miami Heat, returns home. One of the biggest things that was happening during the time in basketball when that happened. He goes to Cleveland, and now you're like, whoa, man, Kyrie Irving and LeBron James on the same team. And then not only that, you add on Kevin Love, but you also add on a new media that's just going to come in every single day and create a narrative. And the reality was for Kyrie Irving during this time of his NBA career, this guy's young. He's an up-and-coming star in this league. And he's trying to, at the end of the day, create his own legacy. So after Cleveland wins those NBA championships and they lose some as well, Kyrie Irving finally demands a trade because he wants to be the man of his own franchise. So he goes and then he tries to lead a Celtics team during that time to the promised land. I mean, we all knew how that ended up turning out for him, as it is just shown now throughout his entire NBA career that Kyrie is not going to be the best player on your team to win. He is a guy that is going to have to be the second option on your team to actually win at the highest level. We've seen that this year alone, period, with Luka being that guy for this Mavericks team, end up making it to the NBA Finals. So look, man, when this all said and done, when it comes to just speaking all these connections and stories about everything, Carmelo Anthony is remembered as one of the greatest scorers to ever play this game. But this guy, in my opinion, his career could have been even greater. Now, if he was drafted by the Detroit Pistons, we would be probably talking about him in a different picture. But we can't speak of him in those conversations really as one of the greatest because he's never won anything at the highest level. He's played on many teams over the years that were not really good or constructed in the right way to even win an NBA championship. The best that he ever could do was make it to a Western Conference Finals. He was just not willing to sacrifice even more to help his team win, in my opinion. Yes, he loved playing with other guys and doing this and that. I'm not going to sit here and try to create this narrative on him, but the reality was that his playing style, he was not willing to sacrifice for others. At the end of the day, it's really up to you if you want to be average or you want to be great. So the choice is yours in that way. But hey, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this brief video today. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more basketball content each and every single week. Have a great day. Peace.